Woman's Periodical TWU Library Sarah McClendon's Washington Report 3133 Connecticut Avenue, NW, Suite 215 Washington, D.C. 20008 June 19, 1992. In this issue, Army says high-level general tests HIV negative. The Army keeps watch on generals. The Navy watches its young sailors. The Navy declares war on sexual harassments. Government imports drugs for sale. Mistake denies injured woman POW Valor Award. Army headquarters strongly defends a 4-star highly placed general who served for many years in important staff positions who is seriously ill. He was in a position to promote EA buddies, both officers and enlisted men. He is now retired but performs certain extra duties when called on by the president. His buddy, another high-level general who had an overall job in the Army, is close to President Bush. The 4-star commander returned from a stressful tour to find that he has a critical case of leukemia. His doctors advised many blood transfusions to save his life. That meant he had to undergo at least 4 tests for HIV. All were negative. Army keeps watch on its generals. Army Criminal Investigations Division keeps files on its generals and their friends, as well as others, who show a different lifestyle, which sometimes is covered up for years. The Department of Defense retains its rule that none who follow unusual sexual lifestyles can serve under the severe pressures of military life. The Navy watches its young sailors. The Navy is pursuing a harsh investigation of young sailors to purge them from the service if suspected of homosexuality. This was brought to public view in a front-page article by the Washington Post on June 14, while the New York Times gave similar prominence to a story about how Navy officers attacked both Navy and civilian women who happened to walk down a corridor of the Las Vegas Hilton Hotel during a convention of the Tailhook Association, a Navy pilots' social organization. The Navy declares war on sexual harassment. The Navy women were brutally mauled. The physical assaults were so fierce and uncalled for that a Navy woman aide to an admiral later told her boss how she was treated. At first, Rear Admiral John W. Snyder, Jr., head of the Patuxent Naval Air Test Center, said, "That's what you get for going to a hotel party with a bunch of drunk aviators," but later he realized how serious was the pilot's action, so reported this to his superiors. All this time, the Secretary of the Navy, H. Lawrence Garrett, sat with friends on a patio outside, blissfully unaware of the hell for women going on inside. At first, Navy officers would not tell on each other. There was silence among them. The Navy had supported this convention by spending $100,000 to fly 1,500 officers to the event. Robert J. Powers, director of Naval Investigations, said he had heard from others that they considered nothing wrong had happened, but eventually 26 incidents were reported. There were more because some women refused to report. Now Garrett has ordered training sessions worldwide for Navy personnel on the evils of sexual harassment. He is not the first Navy secretary to be humiliated by naval personnel harassment of women. In recent years, James Webb had to take the podium in the Pentagon press briefing room to acknowledge that a ship commander in the Pacific had bragged of selling women in the Navy to Korean men. Of course, that had not happened. When the Defense Advisory Committee on Women in the Services told an admiral in command of the Pacific Fleet the ship commander was relieved of his duties immediately. The man was never court-martialed. Navy officials said taking away his command of his ship was punishment enough. No wonder a junior officer in the Navy some years ago, H. Ross Perot, said the Navy was immoral and no place to raise a family. He was tired of hearing gloating tales of promiscuity and sexual encounters by drunken officers as they returned from shore leave. He wanted out. Drugs abound in the U.S. because the government's secret factions in the intelligence community are importing regularly large quantities from other countries. This has been going on for years and continues today. The intelligence community is composed of the Central Intelligence Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the White House, plus a dozen other cooperative government agencies. The drugs are transported in U.S. government airplanes. The drugs are sold and the money laundered through banks and investment houses. The money is used by the intelligence communities to cover expenses of clandestine activities which are often illegal. The whole operation includes gun running all over the world. Money is spent to buy guns, usually manufactured in this country in defense plans. Guns are sold to third world countries, which use them to war on each other. When countries buy guns, they do not buy food for their people, so those countries usually end up calling on the U.S. for help. Much of the drug trade came to light here this week with the circulation of a report written by a murdered colonel who commanded the drug planes. He gave the report to a friend at the National Security Agency at Fort Meade, MD, but the friend was too frightened to release it. He died 10 years later, after which the report was revealed. The report was given to the largest newspapers and the broadcast networks a year ago, but they did not use this. The planes flew out of South American countries to Panama, where they were refueled with General Noriega's blessing, and then went to Miami, Mena, Ark, Iron Mountain Ranch in West Texas, and to bases in Arizona and California. Now, because of citizens' inquiries, Mena is considered too hot for planes to land, so they use smaller airports in southern states and in Texas. The drugs go by contract across the Midwest and East on trucks that are often sealed. Truckers may or may not know what they are delivering. The White House, the CIA, the Air Force, the Department of Defense, Federal Aviation Agency, Justice Department, State Department, Treasury Department were involved in Arkansas. Gov. Bill Clinton knew of this, but did nothing to stop it. Money was laundered in Arkansas. The Central Intelligence Community may get $30 to $50 billion yearly from Congress, but that is never enough. They try to get private donations. Oliver North at the White House tried this in the name of national security. CIA also tapped other federal agencies for part of their appropriations. But mostly the intelligence community, as one individual described it, imported drugs and exported arms to get money to pay for additional covert activities around the world. The drug report shows how an Army Special Forces officer, since murdered, commanded a regular fleet of airplanes from South American countries to Panama, where they were expedited by officials. The group was under the command of the Army at Fort Stevens. The Army had been directed to do this by CIA official Tom Clines. The wife of one Army man, Elaine Tyree, kept a diary about these activities, naming individuals. She was murdered, and her husband, William Tyree, was charged with her murder and sentenced to life imprisonment in Massachusetts. Tyree was working on a related project, which the CIA wanted kept secret. That project was to keep surveillance on officials in Congress to make sure they were not undertaking any law or hearing that would interfere with the drug running. The intelligence officials found out who killed Elaine Tyree, but they let her husband be the fall guy, rather than reveal that they were undertaking surveillance of the Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill, Sen. John Kerry, D. Mass, and many others in Congress to make sure they did not obtain information and seek to stop these activities. Tyree today is trying to get out of jail. Col Edward Catolo commanded the operation out of South America, working under superiors at Fort Stevens, Mass. He gave the report to a friend at the National Security Agency, Fort Meade, MD. The colonel was murdered in Europe during a NATO meeting. His friend was so frightened of the report that he kept it 10 years. After his death, friends made it public. The report contains much evidence about Elaine Tyree's diary. It was later discovered that records on Catolo's history were destroyed by the sponsoring intelligence agencies. The assassin suspected was a co-worker. Also, Col Nick Rowe was killed in the Philippines after his involvement. Injured woman POW denied medal. A gross injustice will soon be rectified by the U.S. Army. Major Rhonda Cornum, flight surgeon serving in the Persian Gulf, will soon get her Medal for Valor, which she had been denied for months because someone made a clerical error. Someone, no one knows who, told the commanders looking at her record that she already had been recommended for the Distinguished Flying Cross. She had not. Therefore she was disproved to get the higher medal, the Bronze Star with V for Valor. The men who flew with her the day they were shot down received their medals, but she did not. Later, a new commanding officer asked if she had received her decoration. She said no. That started an investigation to see why. One cannot receive both of these medals, and the Bronze Star is considered more of an honor. It has taken nearly a year, but she is expected to receive it now. No one has any idea how it was reported she had already been recommended but had not. At the time of the accident, she and a crew were flying in a helicopter looking for a downed pilot when the helicopter was shot down. She had a bullet in her back. She was sexually abused by Iraqi soldiers during her imprisonment. Asterisk v. Sarah McClendon's Washington report is published and syndicated by the McClendon News Service, Washington, D.C. 1992 subscription 26 issues $50. Expiration date on label. Name, date, address, city, state, zip, postmaster, return to 3133 Connecticut NW, Washington, D.C. 20000, 8 first-class male Texas woman's Univ. .3/93 Serials Dept. P.O. Box 23715, Twoosta. Denton, TX 76204 to 1715.